Today I'll be talking about static functions in Godot, just a general overview, like what they are, how to create them, and also a few really good use cases that I've found for static functions. So at a really base level, a static function is going to be a function that exists on the class itself rather than an instance of that class. So you can create one by adding the static keyword before a function definition, and by doing so, this means that my example function here is going to be able to get called from the class directly without creating an instance of this class beforehand. So you're probably thinking like that's really cool, but why would you want to use it? So the first example I have right here is the factory pattern. So let me zoom out a bit here. In this first script, I have an enemy factory class, which basically just has a constant that stores the paths to all of my enemy scenes, and then an enum with all the different types of enemies that I can spawn in. And the main thing we want to look at is right down here, we have the create enemy function. So this is a static function, meaning I can call it from anywhere without having to create a separate enemy factory object beforehand, but it will just require the type of enemy, and it's going to find the correct path to that enemy and load that path in, instantiate it, and then return the newly instantiated enemy. So I can now use this create enemy function from anywhere, obviously, and I'm going to use it in this enemy factory script, which is kind of just utilizing that class. But when I start the game out, I'm just going to loop through 10 times and create a skeleton enemy for each loop. But because I have the function as a static on the class, I can literally just call enemy factory.create enemy and pass in the type I want to create. Now, before we get to the second example, I want to mention really quick that the create enemy function is actually utilizing a static function on the file access class. So we have this file exists function that just checks if the scene actually exists. But you'll notice that I'm not creating a new file access object before calling this method. It's also a static function, so I can just call it directly, which is super helpful. Now, the second example is a system that I like to add to projects lately. It's this idea of a pretty printer. So I have this class pretty printer, and it just has a single function inside of it for print pretty. Now, the idea behind this is anywhere in my code, if I want to like output, debug something, print a value really quickly. Sometimes if you're printing a lot of stuff, it's hard to see like what's going on in the output. So just adding some color to your text or changing the size is obviously really helpful for just like quickly iterating and stuff like that. But it's super annoying to use the print rich function and then have to insert all of your BB code every single time you want to do this. So all this function does is basically just allow you to pass in a color, pass in a size, and then it automatically formats the BB code for you, which is pretty helpful. And again, because this is a static function, I can call this anywhere in code. So for this example right here, I'm just looping through this array, and some of you guys are going to get really angry that I'm putting two loops on the same line. But just to keep this simpler, we're just looking at this line here. Because it's a static function, I can just say pretty printer.print pretty and just give it the color, the random size, whatever I want to do. And by running this, you can see that we get that cool text in the output, making it stand out. Now that brings us to the third example, which is kind of like a utility class. A lot of times you can have a utility class or like a math class that will handle basic like math or conversion functions. So you can see I have grid utilities. This is basically just going to define your cell size, and then it provides two helper functions for converting a world position to grid coordinates and also vice versa. Now, obviously this is going to vary depending on like what project you're working on, but for a grid-based game, this would be a vital piece of your code. So that way you can centralize all of the like conversion code, but different games are going to have different ways that you might want to convert or like format data. So that's where you can kind of get creative with your project specifically. Now, because Godot has so many built-in math functions on the classes themselves, like the vector class has basically all the math functions you're ever going to need for vectors. I haven't really come across a ton of math related functions that I've wanted to add as statics, but an example that I kind of just thought of is we don't have 2D arrays right now in Godot. You have to do an array of arrays to kind of stack things, but 2D arrays are really helpful to make your own class for and then just allow really basic functions to manipulate the data. So having statics on your own custom like 2D array function would be like a great spot to use these. But that's it for static functions. Now I do have another video if you want to check it out that goes over scene constructors. It's really similar to the enemy factory pattern, but it's more for like specifying the logic into each enemy type individually. But I would check that video out if you want to look at a different way to use static functions. Other than that, quick shout out to the channel members. Thank you guys so much for your support. And if you want to become a channel member or check out the Discord server that I have or my website, all the links for that stuff is in the description. But thanks for watching the video. I hope you have a great rest of your week, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.